Hey everybody, this is Tracy here to review part one of Iyanla Fix My Life, Fix My Broken Life. It wasn't my intention to review this show, but after a friend of mine called and was talking about it, I decided to bring up the show and look at it. And so this shouldn't take long because I have little patience for these type of situations. So the show is about the Henry family. The husband's name is Dwight. The wife is Thalicia. It's T-H-E, so I'm thinking Thalicia. And they have two daughters, and the family's in crisis because, well, we'll get to why they're in crisis. But let me start by saying that I'm not married. I have never been married, but I have been engaged before. So I know a little something about not putting up with somebody else's crap. So just know that this review is coming from the perspective of a single woman who's never been married. So I knew that Dwight had some serious issues from the start when he came into the house and plopped down on, they're at Iyanla's house. And he comes into the house and he plops down on the sofa and kind of like falls back on the cushions like he's about to put his feet up on the table and watch Sunday football, an NFL football game or something. I'm just like, dude, are you serious? And then when the camera pans over to Thalicia, she has on a dress and there was so it's a white sofa and it has like some orange pillows or something, and then there were a couple of orange throws, and so she has the throw and she has it wrapped around her waist and covering her lap, almost like she's in church, and the usher has handed her a vanity cloth. So I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be real interesting because something's going on with the both of them. So Iyanla, she tries to start the conversation, and she goes to Dwight first, and she's asking him, why are you here? Why do you need my help? And so, he's been a real butthole, and he's, acting nonchalant, like he doesn't care 1 minute, and then he sits up and he's like, okay, well, let me tell you the story. And so he starts telling some story that happened back in 1997, and Iyanla cuts him off and like, we really here to talk about something that happened almost 20 years ago. And so, he goes back into his story because he's one of those people that it kind of reminds me of Judge Judy. Like, they have to start at the beginning. We can't just start and give the basics of the story. We got to start from the beginning. So Iyanla, goes to the wife and tries to get her to tell what's going on and why they're there. And she doesn't seem to be any much better at telling the story than he is. It's like they're both withholding, like not really want to get to the root of the issue. And so Iyanla eventually tires of Dwight, with his passive aggressive behavior, and she calls him out for being manipulative, and she tells Thalicia to follow her out into the foyer. And so it's driving Dwight crazy because you can tell he has to be the center of attention, and he has some control issues. And so we see him take off his mic, which is like the first of many times that he's going to take off the microphone throughout the show. And so he walks out, and so Iyanla's trying to talk to him, and then he's being really short with her. And so he goes out the door. He says, well, I'm just going to wait outside. And then Iyanla was like, well, go ahead on. And then she goes and she closes the door. So it's like a screen door, and then there's glass doors, I think. And so she closes the glass door, after he walks out, and closes the second door. And so she goes back to the wife, and, she's explaining to the wife that, that's just a part of his MO, and don't believe the tears, because we see him outside and he's actually crying. And Iyanla's like, girl, don't even fall for that. That's just part of, how he manipulates you and manipulates situation. And, we're going to end that today. So don't fall for that. So as the women continue their session with Dwight out of the room, we learn that he had a baby as a result of an affair. Well, actually, we don't learn. We already knew that he had a baby because as he was telling the 1997 story, he did mention that he had an affair and the woman had a baby. And so the wife is telling the story about how the woman used to call the house And Iyanla's like, hold up, wait a minute, and then she actually tells the wife, she's like, if some broad shows up talking about, she's sleeping with my man, we got to have a conversation. And so then the wife is like, well, we talked about it, and Dwight said, and Iyanla was like, well, what do you mean? Dwight said, did you talk to the woman? And then she's like, no, the woman would call his cell phone and he would talk to her. And then when she would question him, then I guess, then he would like tell her what was going on. And then Iyanla said something to the effect of, you never asked the penis about what the penis is doing, and that, the wife should have talked to the woman. If the woman was bold enough to call her house, then, she should have been bold enough to talk to her. We've already seen how Dwight deals with pressure. And so as Thalisha is telling the story, she tells how whenever she tries to talk to him about stuff, he starts crying and then he storms out of the room. So, nobody's surprised. And I'm thinking, this guy is a real coward, and I hate cowardice men. Just drives me crazy. And so Thalisha, this isn't about... Okay, so this isn't about me, so let me stop. Thalisha, she also shared with Iyanla that Dwight has a drinking problem, and before the show, before they arrived to her house, that he had been drinking wine, so that may attribute to his erratic behavior, that they're seeing right now. In the famous words of Maury Povich, the lie detector also determines that Dwight been doing more than drinking some wine, and we learn later in the show that he's also addicted to cocaine. So let's stick a pin right here and let me tell you guys why I'm single. Number one, you're not going to call yourself my husband and be spreading your seed all over town making babies. That's just not going to happen, and I'm not going to be okay with that. Two, you're not going to have women calling my house. I don't care if she is calling the cell phone. If you're in my house, she better not be calling your cell phone. And then three, I'm not supporting anybody's bad habits. There's not going to be any money leaving my damn house to be paying for no drugs and, overindulgence and stuff that's keeping you from being the man that you need to be. And last, I'm not living a life of misery dealing with some fool who is acting like he might come home one day and kill everybody in the damn house. I'm just not living like that. So that's why I'm single. So Thalisha, she was like really starting to get on my nerves, and she started with the, how that cliche about, I love him, but I'm just not in love with him anymore. And I'm like, girl, catch your life before it is over, because you have wasted 19 years of your life supporting this fool and putting up with his crap, and not only ruining your life, but ruining the life of your two daughters. They have a 22-year-old and a 17-year-old daughter whose lives are just... Well, now I shouldn't say ruined, because there's always hope that things will get better, but to date they have just been suffocated by this foolishness that their parents are putting them through. And so a better part of the show was spent with Iyanla going back and forth inside the house, outside the house, trying to reason with Dwight, because he is just acting, he is all over the place. And at one point he becomes aggressive with Iyanla to the point where her son, you can see all the camera crew and the producers, they're starting to gather around, and then a guy appears who's Damon, Iyanla's son, and he confronts him and pushes him away like, dude, what are you doing? And Dwight's like, I'm not that guy, I'm not that guy, I'm not going to hit a woman. And Damon was like, yeah, but you're being too aggressive, and you're just not going to roll up on my mom like that and think it's okay. And so Iyanla and Thalisha are talking, and so Iyanla, she kind of uses that as a teaching moment to let Thalisha know that, when a man is disrespecting you, you should expect, if there's another man around, that he's going to come to your rescue, and that the man in your life is supposed to be there to protect you, not to harm you or hurt you or make you feel bad. So I did agree with that. So as this is going on, Dwight starts crying again, and he's yelling at Iyanla and telling Iyanla that she's doing the same thing to him that his mom and everybody else does to him whenever he tries to express himself. They shut him down and they start accusing him of things that he never gets to voice his opinion. And in that moment, I did feel sorry for him, but it only lasted for a little minute because he was getting on my nerves. And so my sympathy meter was a little low while I was watching this episode. And so Iyanla tells him for like the third or fourth time that he has to leave, and that the wife and the daughter are going to be staying with her. But for some reason, and I don't know if it was the editing that made him look like he was being kind of stalkerish, because Iyanla had on a white shirt and a green skirt the first day, and then the next day she had on a white shirt, I think in some like gray pants or a gray skirt or something like that. So I couldn't tell if it was the same day or the next day, if he kept coming back, if it was like in the morning, in the evening, like what was going on with him. And at one point he was talking about he had to take I think he was in a minivan and he had to take the van to the shop, but he was going to come back and get the car that the wife was driving. It was just too much going on in that scene for me. And like I said, and this went on throughout the entire hour when she was like trying to reason with him and get him to calm down. Iyanla eventually meets with the two daughters, and like I mentioned before, they are 22 and 17. And the 22-year-old doesn't live at home. She went to college, or she's still in college, but she lives with another relative. And she was explaining how she was in a tragic accident, and her dad, she was calling, and the dad wouldn't allow the mom to come and see her in the hospital or wherever she was at. And she ended up totaling her car, and he took the keys so that Felicia couldn't leave and go see about the daughter. And then she was talking about her relationship with her current boyfriend, and how Dwight doesn't like the boyfriend, and he's telling her, the boy is going to hurt her. And I couldn't help but thinking to myself, well, he probably sees himself in that guy, and that's what he's trying to warn her, but he doesn't know how to be a father, so he doesn't know how to come out and tell her, what the guy is all about, because then that would mean that he would have to accept his own faults. And so there's that cycle, and it was really sad because these girls are so damaged, and they're the oldest one, she's so much like her father that she doesn't realize that she's like her father. And then the daughter, she's just so passive and accepting like the mother is. And we also learned in the show that instead of going to a friend or a counselor or her mom or someone else to talk about her issues with Dwight, that Felicia actually has been talking to the daughters about him and about his problems and what's going on, the infidelity. And so the kids are just too involved in grown folks' business, and that never works out. And then there was a scene where Iyanla tells the youngest daughter, she's overweight, too big to be 17 years old. And I guess Iyanla was trying to be polite about it, but I'm sure it hurt just the same, because she told the girl that the reason she has all that extra padding is because she's protecting herself from being hurt. She's protecting her heart from anyone coming in and doing to her what her dad is doing to the mom. And then she's padding herself to being able to absorb the blows and the hurt that's coming from the dysfunction of her family. And I thought that was really deep, and like just how awful that must be for these girls to live. And it got me to thinking, I'm a mother, and I'm sure I've done some things to hurt my kids, but I like to think that I was able to pull back and recognize what I did, and go back to them and explain to them, why something was or why I said something. And so I know that no parent is perfect, but we have to consider our actions when we're around our children. But Dwight and Felicia, they're both, when it comes to their kids, they are just two very selfish people. Oh, and I wanted to scream when the oldest daughter said that Dwight was a deacon and a ordained minister in the church. And I was just like, girl, bye. Like, come on, seriously, like he's in somebody's church with this foolishness. And then it reminded me that when they were first talking with Dwight, he came in the house and was, lounging on the sofa. He did tell Iyanla that he had given his life to Christ in an attempt to be a better man and a better husband and a better father. And Iyanla had asked him, so what does giving your life to Christ mean to you? And he got really offensive and thought that she was mocking him. But now that we know that he's like active in the church, he probably, it probably was the Holy Spirit convicting him for sitting up there being an asshole and treating his family the way he was, and talking about, he gave his life to Christ and how he was reading his Bible and going to church every time the door is open and all that nonsense, because evidently the Word of God was not penetrating his heart in any way, form, or fashion. Eventually, Felicia lets Iyanla know that she wants out of the marriage, that she wants a divorce. And I think this was actually when Iyanla made the decision that she wanted Dwight to leave and that the wife and the girls were going to stay with her. And it was also, in the show, it was revealed that Iyanla took their cell phones so that he couldn't get in touch with them, because her whole thing was she wanted to take him out of his comfort zone and take the manipulative behavior away from him and keep them from falling into his tracks. And so at the point where he realizes they don't have the phone, you can see him and Felicia arguing back and forth, and she's trying to explain to him that she had to give the phones because they were taping live, and they didn't want the phones ringing. So she's making up an excuse as to why she gave Iyanla the phone. And Iyanla's telling her, you don't have to explain anything to him. Why are you out there explaining to him? Don't answer the phone and go about your business. So this is probably going to be harder for Iyanla than she thinks it's going to be, because you're talking about breaking 19 years of history and bad behavior. And it's going to be easier said than done. And to be honest, the more the show went on and the more erratic his behavior became, although they never said he was physically abusive, I just can't believe that this man has never hit his wife before. I mean, she has to be the most docile creature there is, that if he has never hit her, because his behavior was just so crazy. And then you add in alcohol and the fact that she says he's addicted to cocaine, and just how he had these patterns of aggressiveness, and then he became very passive. It was just a volatile situation. So the show winds down with Iyanla telling Dwight that before he can come back, to go home and come back the next day, but before he comes back and is allowed back in the house to talk with her, that he has to do a drug test. And he's like, what? So now he knows that the wife is told about the cocaine. And so, he goes through a few more emotional cycles, but at that point, it's like, who cares? Boy, get in that car and go home and get you a good night's sleep, because you're being irritating and you're being annoying. So, like I said, it was going to be quick, and we'll see what happens. Part 2 comes on tonight at 9 p.m. on the OWN network. And until the next time, take care, be blessed, and remember to love yourself more than you love anybody else, but never more than you love God. Bye-bye.